Alright guys, what's up? Today we are in Córdoba, Argentina, and I'm going to be making this video today breaking down one of the hidden gems of Argentina. My friends have been telling me for a while, Jake, please do not make this video because you're going to contribute again to the ruining of another hidden gem in Latin America, but I just can't help myself. But if you're watching this channel, my channel is still pretty small right now, so there's a good chance that if you watch this and you get to some of these areas that I go to quickly, because I tend to like to go to the areas that are a little bit off the beaten path. But Córdoba especially is the second largest city in Argentina, and it has a lot of good things going for it. I'm going to be comparing it mostly to Buenos Aires, but a lot of the pros and cons that you find here are going to be the same for Argentina in general. I want to first break down the general overview of what it looks like at a geographic city level, and then get into kind of the social things, the way of life, the pros and cons and stuff like that. So getting into the video, Cordoba is relatively nicely located in Argentina for the fact that it is in the middle of the country. Also as well, what's nice about Cordoba is that they have some mountains. They have a little bit of a Sierra mountain range. They're not like massive snow-capped mountains or anything like that. But one thing that you find in Buenos Aires is that there's not really too much nature in Buenos Aires. They have some parks. There's Tigre, which is a little swampy region about an hour north of the center of the city. So as far as nature, and then surrounding it is mostly plains and flatlands and stuff like that. So if you're someone that likes nature, with Cordoba you have some mountains that are an hour away, which I find to be a major benefit. But on top of that, it being the second largest city in Argentina, but it's actually several times smaller than Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is massive. I don't know the exact numbers of millions of people, but I'm pretty sure Cordoba just barely reaches over 1 million, maybe 1.5 million. I'm sure someone in the comments below can add the exact numbers and everything like that. But although it is the second largest city, it is still relatively small. Within the city, you have a couple of different neighborhoods. I've been here for over 8 months total, maybe almost a year total, spread out throughout different trips. So I know this place pretty well. I know the streets and everything like that pretty much like the back of my hand. So if you need advice or guidance on anything specifics about being here, then you could just shoot me a message on Instagram. Essentially, there's maybe 3 or 4 that most people are going to be interested in. There's Nueva Córdoba, there's Centro, and then there's Güemes. And on top of that, there's also, I think it's Villa Carlos. I might be saying that wrong, or I might even be saying the wrong barrio, but they're all relatively clustered together a bit. There's a few other wealthier communities and stuff like that that live in the suburbs a little bit further out, to the north and as well as to the south. But those areas are going to be the main ones: Nueva Córdoba, El Centro, Güemes, and then Villa Carlos Paz or something like that. Those are going to be the most prominent areas that a lot of people are going to stay in. Nueva Córdoba is nice because it's safe, it's relatively clean. There's a lot of universities around here. It has good architecture, and it has good nightlife and stuff like that for that reason. And then you have Güemes, which is pretty much right next to Nueva Córdoba, and that's really the main nightlife area. So maybe it wouldn't be a place that I would stay, because you're gonna get a lot of music and stuff like that at night in that neighborhood. But if your focus is nightlife, then Güemes is pretty much the area in Córdoba for that. You have El Centro, which is a little bit, I would say, a little bit rough around the edges. It's not like in El Centro. If you've been to Medellin or Bogota or maybe even Mexico or some of these places in the big cities, when you go to the center of town, it's usually a very dangerous spot. And this place in the center of town here, I wouldn't necessarily go there at night, walking around. During the day, I don't feel any danger or anything like that really whatsoever. But it is a little more, what's the word for it? Colorful. So you gotta maybe be a little more on your toes in that area, but it's really not something that, I stress again, not that big of a deal. What's pretty nice about all these areas is that they're relatively close to each other. You can walk to pretty much most things of interest without ever really needing an Uber. I have my butcher shop, my grocery stores, gyms, some parks. The only thing that I ever have to get an Uber to is to my jiu-jitsu gym, which just happens to be a little bit too far away. I probably could walk, but just happens to be a little bit too far away to walk. But pretty much aside from that, unless I really don't feel like walking, most things are within 10, 15, 20 minutes walking at the most. Whereas like in Buenos Aires, and I'm going to get into kind of direct comparisons further on in this video, but in Buenos Aires, you have these really long Uber rides to places, a lot of times a lot more expensive too. And it just takes forever, it feels like sometimes, to get from one area to the other. Now, all this is to say, Buenos Aires is a really good area, but I'm not saying that like Buenos Aires sucks and you have to go to Córdoba, because it's really going to depend on what you prefer. So I would say some of the pros is Córdoba, it has less foreigners, it has less of a gringo presence and stuff like that here, which isn't, again, that's a pro and a con. It's like, it's nice that the people here that you meet, it's always usually Argentines. I have a few friends here that are from the States or from Europe or something like that as well. There's language exchanges here that people go to where you will find like a good degree of foreigners, although it's like the same faces in every single time. But really, so it's a pro and a con when there's not as many foreigners. The pro is like you get to experience the place a little more authentically. You're not paying overpriced for things, like overpriced things just because you're in like the touristy area. And you actually get to develop relationships with the people. The con of that, the reverse of that, is that there's not as much networking opportunities. So in Latin America, in Argentina, the networking opportunities with locals is low. It's like rock bottom. There's not a lot of, the economies in these places are so bad, whereas if you're someone that's really business minded, or you're an entrepreneur or a digital nomad, you're not necessarily going to relate in that aspect of things so much to the people here. So if you're someone who's very much focused on like your business or the stuff you're doing with being a digital nomad, a bigger city like Buenos Aires is going to make more sense in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of other foreigners that are there that are entrepreneurs, that are in that hustle culture. And if you want to network with those people, you're not really going to find that as much in a city like this. But if you're someone who doesn't really care about that, if you're a little bit more of a lone wolf, so to say, and you're cool with making connections and friends with people in the local area, then a city like this is going to be pretty good. Now, another thing that comes with that, along the same, you're going to see like a trend that a lot of these things go together pretty much anywhere you go, is that the language is a huge barrier here. There are some people here that I've met that spoke English, but keyword some. I would say generally I do not meet people here that speak English on average. Definitely not a majority. Even in Buenos Aires, the English levels are not necessarily really that high, and here it's even less. So do not come here expecting to speak English with a lot of people. You will be severely disappointed. You should, this is like one of those places that you can go to if you're really confident with using Google Translate and stuff like that, and you don't really care, then yeah, by all means, rock up here. But I would definitely not recommend this place if you're someone who's very, what I say, language sensitive, where I don't really I care too much about the language, because I feel like I've been in a lot of places, like I was in Brazil, I was in a lot of places where I didn't speak any Portuguese. I think that the language thing does not matter as much as a lot of guys make it out to be, especially guys when they go places and if they're having a hard time with like chicks or whatever, they're like, oh my God, like the language. All right, bro, I would say go to Buenos Aires, hit up all the language exchanges until your Spanish is good enough, and then probably go to a place like Córdoba. Other things that kind of go in with the cons, things tend to be pretty slow based on the schedule here. On Sundays, for instance, a lot of things almost everything it feels is closed on Sundays. And even during the week, a lot of times, there's certain places that I like to go, like cafes or restaurants or whatever. And it feels like at the time when I want to go, it's like a lot of times like the middle of the day or something like that, they're closed. There's an empanada place that I really like that I like to go to sometimes, and their hours are weird. It's like from like 11 till 1, and then from 5 till 7, and then from, so it just doesn't really make sense all the time, which again, it can be like a pro. What's nice is like on a Sunday, for instance, on a Sunday and on a Saturday morning, because Argentines, they go out until 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, so they literally spend the weekends pretty much sleeping all day. What's cool about that is like on Sundays and Saturday mornings, everything is pretty much dead. There's not a lot of movement. It feels very relaxed. And so whereas like in America or some other places, it feels like all the days really just blend together in a way. Here, there is a very clear like structure to the week, where it's when it's a Friday, when it's a Saturday, when it's a Sunday, and every single week has that weekend reset. I'll say one thing about the seasons here, about specifically Cordoba, is they do tend to be a little bit more extreme, and not extreme, but more harsh than Buenos Aires, where Buenos Aires, they can have some pretty hot summers, they can have some pretty cold winters, relative to where you're from, but in Cordoba, it feels like it's even more. It's like even colder winters and even hotter summers, especially the summer. So I'm from the south in the United States. I grew up around the hot. I don't like being in the hot so much. So I don't know, I try to avoid the summers here, especially January, December. It's pretty scorching here. I personally care for being here, but if some of you do not care about that, if you don't really care about the weather, or if you really like hot weather, then for instance, the months of December and January are pretty hot. And then the months of July, August can tend to be pretty cold as well. All right, buddy, you gonna stop or not? Alrighty, and the last part is the women and the dating. What is dating like here in Córdoba, Argentina? I know that is something that a lot of you guys who watch my channel are interested in knowing about, and what I can say is that they are very beautiful. I would say probably some of the most beautiful that I've come across really in the world, let alone Latin America, especially per capita. This is a city with a lot of abundant beauty, not just on a physical level. They have everything. The looks of the people can be anything from German, where you have like blonde hair, blue eyes, that's quite rare, to that Bolivian Mesoamerican sort of look on the other end, and that's also not so common either. And then most of it's pretty much everything in between. And so you have a lot of different looking people here, and but in general, like lighter than a lot of other Latin American countries, skinny and very soft, kind of mouse-like, really pretty facial features as well. They all have this butterfly tattoo for some, but anyways, in general, I would say the women I've met have been like really high quality here in general, but it also depends on how you meet them. This is also a big party city, so if you're going out and you're partying a lot, then you're going to meet those types. It's pretty much the same everywhere you go in the world. It's like, where are you going or anything like that. So that's pretty much all I'll say without getting into too much like personal detail or anything like that. But if you want any advice or tips or hear more about my own personal experiences or whatever, you can shoot me a message on Instagram. But other than that, pretty much wraps up the video. I think Cordoba is a cool place right now. I think it's a matter of time before more people start leaving America and the West and a lot of these places in general, and start first. There was the Colombian sort of phase and wave, which is still going on, and a lot of people that are in Colombia right now are looking into Argentina, especially with recent change with Milei and stuff like that. So you're going to see a lot of changes, I think, in the future. I think that Argentina really got put on the map with the political election just last year. So it's up in the air how things are going to go. The economy has, at least the inflation has somewhat stabilized to an extent. And I know there's people like Elon Musk that are talking about investing into the country and a lot of stuff that I'm not smart enough to understand, but we're really going to see if there's going to be more interest coming in here. And I think in general, yes, I think there is going to be more people coming here in general. And I think amongst others, are among of a part of an initial wave. There are some people that have been here for a long time, especially in Buenos Aires, but I think that in the near future, things are going to be changing, and some people are going to go to Buenos Aires, which I really like, but then some people are maybe going to look for something slightly smaller, more authentic, but not quite so small and authentic that it's boring or anything like that. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you watching. Let me know what your thoughts, if you've been to Cordoba, if you have any questions on Cordoba. I might make a video standalone just on dating here in general. But anyways, other than that, hope you're having a good day, and thank you for watching. Subscribe. Peace out.